So hello, welcome back to another episode of How to Run Profitable Retreats. And today I have Dana here with me. I'm so excited to welcome her. She's a decision expert. Yes, you hear this right. Making decisions sometimes can be very, very hard. And it's not an easy way to do it, but she has an amazing way to do this because she created this 5-step decision-making system, right, called the Decision Smith. And it's an app. And she's also a 2-time best-selling author and creator of youchallenge.com and powered by Decision series of courses. So I'm so excited to have you here today and to be spending some time together and learn about decision making and how important it is, and get to know you a little bit better for everyone who's here in the audience and are wondering, wow, is there a way I can make decisions better?
Thank you so much for having me. That was a great introduction. You jam-packed a whole bunch into that. But yes, there is a simple way to make tough decisions, and I can't wait to talk about it today.
Oh, well, I'm so excited. So let's get into it. Tell us a little bit about you and why, you found out that decision making is so important and crucial in our lives.
Well, I ask this question quite often. Do you know that we make 35,000 decisions a day? I think we've talked about this before, right? That's an incredible number. So why do we still suck so badly at making decisions, right? When we're faced with so many in a given day. And obviously a lot of those are simple decisions where, if you have a bowl of cereal and you go to the utensil drawer, you don't have to think too hard about the fact that you're picking a spoon over a fork. But it's when you are faced with those much tougher decisions that, sometimes even if you're walking, you would have to stop walking to be able to focus and concentrate enough to be able to make that decision. So, I learned all of that over the last, it's been 33 years that I've been studying the science of decision making. I can't believe it's been that long, but I was in a first-year university class in psychology. And up on the board, there was this big onerous matrix as it related to decision making in our research methodologies. And I'm a closet math geek, so I got it. Like everything up there made sense to me. Other people in the class, not so much. But it really showed me that there was a process to decision making. And I left that class thinking, well, heck, if there's something that can be used for psychologists and engineers and professionals, there's got to be something that the layman can use when they're faced with, the tough decisions that they are every day. So I kind of made it my mission to research and trial and error a process that people could easily walk through to be able to get an end result that made sense and was the best way forward for them. So that took me about 15 years. So it was, about 18 years ago, we were still using, Excel spreadsheets. Actually, one of my initial users said, I remember when you were just writing it out on a piece of paper, like drawing lines on a paper. So it evolved from that to an Excel spreadsheet. At one point, I had an online web version of my app, so you could go to like a URL and put your information in. And gosh, it's been 4 or 5 years that I've now had my app in iTunes and Google Play. So there's been an evolution. But essentially just breaking it down into 5 simple steps that people can follow, and they get a mathematical score and a percentage that points them in the right direction.
Oh my gosh, I love this. And for me, I love math. So it's like it makes so much more sense when we're talking about these numbers, right? And when you're studying behavioral psychology and everything, you can learn how to translate feelings and emotions into numbers. And then you can see which one like takes you into one direction or the other, and what is the best decision for you. And so many times we get just cluttered in our heads with all the thoughts when we have to make a big decision, right? I'm sure everyone in this audience has felt one day like there's so many things happening in the head when they have to make a big decision, right? Like, I don't know, quitting your job or moving to a different city. These like kind of big decisions that require a lot of thought. And sometimes we cannot even take a decision because there's so many things on our head that there's no clarity.
Right.
And I think your app, this is exactly what it does. It removes all this clutter And then it allows you to go step by step into finding a decision that is really what you want, that has clarity inside of it.
Absolutely. And, you make a few really good points, especially about the, the emotion and the logic with the math and that kind of thing. You don't have to learn how to differentiate or to accommodate for either of those in this process. It's built in. So we have a lot of people who are emotional decision makers. They make it with their heart and their gut feeling and that kind of thing. But those people oftentimes feel like they might be overlooking some of the logic and the black and white side of the decision. And conversely, I work with a lot of people who are very logical and very black and white and don't see any gray and don't want to be vulnerable in introducing any type of emotion into a decision because they feel that will cloud their judgment. What I've learned is that we need to have both of those components, and this system allows you to marry them. Again, it's not hard work. You just follow the instructions and it automatically does that for you, so that at the end of the day, that you've considered everything from a logical perspective and an emotional perspective, and it's all there right in front of you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. But so tell us about these 5 steps, because now I'm like, I know we've spoken about it, but I know so many people are like wondering like, oh my gosh, what are these 5 steps to actually be able to make decisions easily?
Well, it's fairly simple. Maybe because I've been doing it for so long, but the first thing that you have to do is identify the decision that you have in front of you. And that may seem really rudimentary or like, well, you might say like, of course, that's the first step. But, I'll tell you a quick story. I was working with someone he was an athlete, and he was playing his sport on a specific team, and he learned about a new opportunity on another team that offered, greater growth potential and things like that. But he was really distraught because he was really happy with his teammates and his coaches, and just felt the loyalty to them. So when we had our first conversation, one of the things I always ask is, so like, when do you have a deadline to make this decision? And he said to me, well, tryouts are this weekend. And I said, oh, so you mean you haven't been offered a position on the new team yet? Like, we're not making that decision? Because that's what he told. He said, I have to decide whether or not I'm going to go to this new team. And I said, tryouts haven't even happened. So the decision, you're going to be really happy about the decision that we have to make today, because the only decision we have to make today is whether you try out or not. You're already getting so many steps ahead of yourself. So again, just making sure that we're starting at the right spot. And as you can imagine, people start thinking about making that decision, and then they get ahead of themselves and they start looking at all the subsequent decisions that will have to be made. And I think this process really helps you hone in on the task at hand and allows you to focus. So that's a very long-winded way of describing step 1, which is identifying your decision. As you can imagine, the next thing that we do is look at what options you have and listing those options. So, that's, again, fairly self-explanatory. One of the things that I always incorporate when I'm doing my one-on-one coaching, especially, is to ensure that we look at status quo as one of the options. And we determine whether or not they could actually stay where they're at. And if so, how long of a time could they possibly stay status quo. So again, we're incorporating all the options that are viable and feasible. And it's sometimes an eye-opener. Things come up that they didn't necessarily anticipate, or there are many times at this stage, after just a little bit of discussion about it, we remove options from the list that they thought were potentials previously.
I love this because, sorry to interrupt you, but I love this because it is like so many times we don't even consider that an option is to do nothing. Right? We always think that making a decision means going somewhere else, but there is also the option that actually you just stick to where you are.
Yeah, and if I can caveat that, the reason it works right now with my system is because at the end of the day, you get a score that shows you. So let's give an example. Say you're in a job and you have been putting your resume out there, and let's say you have 2 potential opportunities. So what I suggest is putting status quo, staying in your current job as an option, and potential job 1 and potential job 2, and you go through and you get the scores. And what it does for you is it shows you whether or not either of these 2 potential jobs are viable. And it also shows you, like, sometimes people go, oh, my job isn't as bad as I thought, because it might have a higher score than the potentials they thought were the be all and end all. And conversely, it might show you, like, you might get a really negative score for your current job, and that might light a fire under you to say, oh my goodness, what am I tolerating staying in this job? So it's like there's so many outcomes that you can derive when you do this process properly.
I really like this, because it is so true. So many times we want to stay in one place because it's just comfortable, right? Because it's known, like, doesn't shows a challenge. It gives us these, like, we get something out of it, right? We might get some safety, but we might just be having a horrible time. But you're getting something on the side that is like what you think at that point that it's what you need. But when you start seeing the decisions, you might be like, well, I could have a job that I like and still feel safe.
It does exist beyond the confines of what your brain is currently telling you.
Okay, wow, that's amazing. Okay, so number 1, you see what the decision has to be done, and number 2, you see what are the options of those decisions that you make.
Right. Number 3 is defining your factors. So those are all the things that you're taking into consideration as you're making this decision. And what I say to people, this is the most important step of the entire process, because you want to make sure that your list is a mile long. And I exaggerate, but if you're not, first of all, this isn't an app that I would suggest using to decide where to go for dinner. It's you can use a magic 8 ball for that, in my opinion. But this is something that you've probably been thinking long and hard about, and there's much criteria that you're taking into account. So say, buying a house. You can start really quickly by rhyming off things like, you want a 2-story, you want a garage, some people want a pool, a certain number of bedrooms, that type of thing. But then you can go a little bit deeper and talk about things like neighborhood for schools. I know when we built our family home, I went so far as to want a home that had the sidewalk on the other side of the road, because I didn't want to have to worry about the parking or the shoveling. I took into account where the closest fire hydrant was, all those little things. So, like, very, very detailed in terms of minutia. And, some of those may seem inconsequential or minor, but we accommodate for that. So I tell people to put, a paper and pen beside their bed or their phone or whatever. And anytime you have a thought that just crosses your mind as it relates to this decision, write that down as one of your factors. And again, some people can do it in about 48 hours. Some people, it's taking them a week or 2, because they're giving real intense thought to what they're taking into consideration.
Yeah, for me, the factor sounds even as much as a wish list, right? Like all the things that you want to get. And it's so important to be very clear, because if you want to manifest or get something to happen in your life, you need to know exactly what you want and how you want it to look, right? And then of course, there's certain things that will be more important. Like, for example, your house, well, you want a house that has a roof, right? So high priority. And maybe there's some things that are nice to have, but they're not the main thing, but you still want them, right? So maybe you will take the decision even if the water hydrant is not super close to your house, but it doesn't mean you don't want that water hydrant to be close to your house if that's the possibility, right? Within your choice. And of course, this can translate to any other examples.
Absolutely. So you're right, in terms of determining how important things are, because that's actually the next step.
I skipped already. See?
Yeah, it's all right, but it makes sense, right? Like nothing about this is rocket science. It's just how it all molds together that just becomes such a perfect system. So, step 4, you're rating your factors out of 10. So, you're looking at, and again, not ranking, because some people get confused. Do I have to have a 10, 9, 8? Like, no, you can have a like 5 10s, 3 8s, 2 7s, a 3. Maybe the water or the fire hydrant for me was probably a 2 or a 3, but it was on my list. But it was a much more minor requirement than 4 bedrooms or what have you. So that's where you're rating your factors based on how important they are to you today, making this decision. And we talk about today, and a lot of people say, well, I'm making a decision for my future, not just today. But as you work with me to make sure that your list is fully formed, we talk about the sustainability of the decision. So as you look at a job, what's the growth potential, or what's the salary increase potential? Those are all factors that we're taking into consideration. So we are accounting for the future. If you're looking at a house, maybe you don't have any kids now, but you plan on having 3. So a 4-bedroom house is going to accommodate your future needs. So, during those conversations, we make sure that we're not just looking at the present, but creating an environment where we're looking at the big picture down the road as well.
And I really feel like most of the people who are listening to us are spiritual entrepreneurs looking to create transformation, but at the end of the day, business owners, right? And when you're your own business owner, like, of course, it's a job, right? It's like a big thing to be on your own and to be responsible for your actions and everything, like having someone else taking care of all the decisions when you're working for a company, slightly different, right? But this is something that is perfect when you're thinking about your business, because so many times you have to make decisions whether you go towards one direction or you go to the other one. And it makes such a huge difference. Like my business has like many different like avenues where I could be focusing my time. But I get to decide every year when I do my planning and my goal setting, which avenues I'm going to really focus on for that year. And that makes such a huge difference, because I know that where I'm spending my energy, that's where my business is growing the most.
Right.
And then I can have other plans that are not like, okay, these are not happening right now, but everything that I'm doing in this piece is also building for the next piece to happen. So it doesn't have to be like just for today or for like the immediate business, but also think about long term. And making decisions on your business is something that is crucial, because if you don't make any decisions, you stay stagnant. And what happens in a business when it's stagnant, there's no transactions, no money. And then basically you end up suffering.
Right.
Because you're like, oh, now you have to make a decision. Do I stay here? Or do I go find a job? You know what I mean? Like,
and that you can incorporate into your factors. Like, does this meet my goals for the quarter or the year or whatever? Like, how does that fold into it or move that needle forward? So, it's a lot of it is about making sure you have a clear picture in your head of what you're striving towards, and then determining whether or not this particular option leads you to that.
I really like this, because it is also very important to like understand that things have different weights, right? So when you are evaluating, you're saying this is a 10, this is an 8, this is a 7, you're also giving this understanding for you that not everything has the same like level of importance for you, even though it might have that like something for someone else. Having a 4-bedroom might not be so important because they don't even know if they're gonna have kids, so they're like, well, if it has 2, I'm good, you know what I mean? But it is important for you to be able to be aware, right, of how important is one thing for you when you're making a decision. Like when you're like, you have a job, right? Or you're considering a job, or you're thinking, do I move careers or not? There's so many things in play, because it's not just about the salary. There's so many other things, like the team. Are you now leading people, right? Is there like this element that maybe the salary increase is not so high, but now you're going into a role where you have subordinates. Is that going to allow you to grow into your next step? And and then we can keep going on this.
Yeah. And a point that you're bringing to my mind as you're talking is one that I come up against so often, because when I'm speaking or in a group or doing a workshop or something like that, one of the questions I ask right out of the gate is, when you're faced with a tough decision, what do you do? Where do you start? And 95% of the time, people tell me that they use a pros and cons list. And I shudder, because for me, a pros and cons list can be a recipe for disaster. It's like I say that my system kind of starts with that, but you've got to go way beyond. If you're using a pros and cons list to make your decisions, you're flying by the seat of your pants. Because just like you said, like, let's say you're looking at a job and it's like an industry that you love and a company that you respect and a job title, job duties that you can't wait, and a team that's wonderful, and you get to work from home if that's important to you, and just all these pieces are just like, you couldn't have written a better job for yourself. So your pros list is a mile long, and the only thing on the cons side is you make minimum wage, right? For me, I need to make more than minimum wage. So that one con is going to completely outweigh every single pro. And so if you're making your decision solely based on the number of line items on each side of those, each side of the pros and cons line, you're not going to make a decision that's in your best interest. So that's why incorporating a process like this, that's just a little bit more robust. Remember, because I said, back when I learned this, the big onerous, matrices on the board, this is a really dumbed down version of that, but it's still, I tested it, like I said, for 15 years before I, landed on my final product. And, the people that I tested it with said, where has this been all my life? And everybody needs to know, how to make decisions using this system.
Yeah, and I also, like, for me, something that is important when you're putting your list of all your facts and everything that is happening is like, how does this affect other aspects of your life?
Mm-hmm. And you can incorporate that, like, I keep going back to job just because it's an easy one and people can relate. People might be looking at an opportunity and their spouse may be either for or against. So you have an opportunity to put as one of your factors what my spouse thinks. And then you can rate how important what they think is your decision-making process. And for some people, it's really important. For others, they want to make sure they take it into consideration, but it's maybe only a 5, but at least you're factoring that into your process.
Yeah, this makes total sense. Like, I remember the story of this woman. She's like working in a big company, pharmaceutical company in the States. And she got offered another position, right? So she got like a BP position and everything. And she was like, well, I really want to take the job because it like feels good for my career. But then she was not sure about it because she was also thinking like, this means more hours, more this, more that, like less time with my family. So all the aspects that would come with that, right? Like, and then there was a lot of parts of that job that were the things that she didn't really enjoy. So she was like, because I will have to do so much of that, I won't have time to do the things that I really, really like in my job. So right. Then she actually had to make a decision, and her decision was to go and ask the person who offered her the job in the company and say, well, if I take this job, this is what I need. They said, yes, I need 2 more staff member, and they're like, yes, perfect. You got it. But she made a decision to not just take the job or not take the job. She made a decision to go and speak and say what she wanted and what she needed for her to be able to take that job, and then made a decision based on that. Right, so because she got it, then it was an easy yes, right?
Absolutely. And I feel like, today's workforce is much more in tune with what makes them tick as opposed to just climbing the corporate ladder. There's so many more variables that they look at when they make their decisions, which is great. People still don't know how to put that all together. So again, it's
They have
yeah.
an app to help you with that. Isn't like it's so amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then what's step number 5? Because now I want to like, I'm like ready to.
It only makes sense that we're scoring your options. So we take each option one at a time and we score them against each of the factors that you've written down. So option 1, you score the whole list. Option 2, then score option 3, however many you have. And like I said, what that gives you is a mathematical score and a percentage that points you in the right direction. So you're going to get the mathematical score. A perfect score might be 80 and you might score a 36. And when you look at them, I should have picked easier numbers so I could think of what that percentage is off the top of my head. So say a perfect score is 50 and you scored a 25, that would obviously be a 50%. And my question is always, if you got 50% at school, is that But sometimes in life, all you have are these options and you have to pick one of them. So you would obviously go with the highest scoring one. But sometimes when you get scores back that are lower, it might say to you, hey man, I got to go back to the drawing board and find myself a few more options if you are afforded the time to be able to do that. So it's really like, it's not just the numbers and what's the best. It really helps you kind of figure out next steps and whether or not you actually have to make that decision now.
It makes total sense in the way of, like, for example, if you like going back to the example about jobs, right? So you have your job and it turns out you don't really like it and you've been there just because you've been there. And now you have 2 other job offers because you put out your CV and this is the 2 companies that came back to you, but none of them are good options. So you might just choose to stay a little bit longer in this job that you don't like until you find a 3rd option or a 4th option that really is what you're looking for.
Right. And again, that's when you can see, if you've put status quo as one of your options, you can see where your current rating is and you can understand how much you're tolerating. And if it's a decent score, then you buy yourself some more time. But if it's really bad, then, up your game. And I remember working with a client who, was moving. She needed to find a new apartment and she had put a self-imposed deadline. I want to know by Friday night so I can have the weekend and I can just move on. So, Friday night, she had her couple of options and they were mediocre at best. And, I said to her, like, you've imposed this timeline. You've got a week beyond that to still make your decision. You imposed this timeline. Can we just give it the weekend and see, like, let's circle back Monday morning. It still leaves you the 5 days to make decisions. And over the weekend, this perfect property came available. She went to see it. We scored it. It was like it blew the numbers out of the water and she moved there and it was a perfect spot for her. So just, the comfort of knowing that she was in control of when the decision was being made, wasn't something that she even considered without having a conversation with me,
I love this. And I think that this is something that could be so powerful for people who are running retreats in this, or they have let's say a coaching business and they're thinking about adding retreats into their business, right? And figuring out if this is the right decision for them to add retreats into their business right now, or, if they should have started a while ago and they're taking too long, or if it's maybe not the right time for them to add it. Right. And then really make a decision out of a place of understanding and knowing all the things that retreats are going to bring to them. But at the same time, what is that? How does that ripple into everything else in their business ecosystem? Right. So this feels like absolutely an amazing tool for that.
Absolutely. You can decide where to host a retreat, how long the retreat is, how many people you invite. There's so many different considerations that you can use this for to help you make the best decisions for your business, because it's not a cookie cutter. It's not, nothing's been programmed, to spit out a result. It's all about the information that you're putting in based on your own individual needs and thoughts and, wants in the situation.
Oh, I love this. I think in my next program of mastering my next classes of mastering the art of retreat planning, I'm gonna make them do this because it's gonna be so powerful for them to actually get to see all these things and learn how to use this as a tool for decision making.
Absolutely. And one of the other bonuses I've learned and I've seen and witnessed, and it worked for me as I was testing this throughout the years, is that once I made a decision, having gone through this exercise, I saw all the good that came with this decision, but I also was acknowledging the stuff that wasn't so good, the bad, so it's not just like, oh, I'm going to make this decision, it's all rosy and perfect. You're taking the good with the bad because you've done this whole exercise and you see where this decision is going to be positive in certain areas, but
Right.
there are there aren't very many decisions that are perfect in every single aspect. So it's highlighted where some things where you can expect that things won't be perfect. So you already have a knowledge going in. And so you won't be disappointed as you move through that. Oh, I never thought about this. Well, you've thought about everything when you use this system.
I love this because this gives you awareness.
Absolutely. And no excuses.
No excuses, no more hiding. No more hiding because, oh, I just don't want to make a decision, so hard. And it's so, like, honestly, when you're like in business, it becomes quite hard sometimes to make decisions, right? And sometimes we go with like just like, oh, I really feel like this is the right thing, and we just go in for it. And then, but if we had that, then we have this awareness, then what would create is that we know what to expect and how to cover all these empty holes, right? That are like maybe lacking, that we would have not seen before if we just went ahead and just like, I'm doing this, like, I don't know. I'm thinking now of skydiving, like making a decision to either you jump or you don't. Like, what is that going to make you feel? And how is that going to reflect in like everything in your life? Like, I have a friend, she went and like, she got like her stomach, she felt like her stomach was here by the time she landed. And if she had the next day to teach a class or something, she probably like, she would have not been in this perfect space to teach a class because she was probably still suffering from the whole ball being dropped off the sky.
Right. It's funny, I was up at a cottage a couple weeks ago when we went cliff jumping into the water, and I knew I wanted to do it, and I know I just need to get up there and not think about it. I'd already made the decision, get up there, and I stepped to the edge and I went, oh, bleep, bleep, bleep. And then I jumped, so there was still that moment of, oh, I made this decision, I got to go through with it, but I still, my stomach was in my throat and that kind of thing, but very similar. But I had already made the decision, I'm going to do this. There's no going back. And I think that's what's happened with me as a decision maker, is I'm so confident in the decisions I make because I know I'm turning over every stone, and as you make decisions in your life that you don't have any backup against, if you're a business owner and you start creating things based on the decision that you've made that you think is right, when you start creating, there's still going to be that little wee niggle of a question, is this the right thing? And that's going to come up in whatever you create. It's going to be static. So if you're very confident, yep, this is the right decision, then you do this and you move forward, and there's no static in whatever you're creating. And it's just, you have a much more crystallized message and offering that lands so much more strongly.
This makes so much sense. Like, I really like the way you're putting it. And I think that this is like such a powerful information for everyone who's listening, because we have to make decisions every day. You heard, Dana, 35,000 per day. The first time I heard that number, I was like, gosh, I kind of like went a little bit into a tiny shock, because I was like, that feels like a lot. So imagine if like the big decisions, you can really take a bunch of the weight of it by using her app, the Decisions Smith. Isn't that like super cool?
Something else I did recently was I Googled, how long does it take somebody to make a tough decision? You know what I came up with? You're sitting down, right?
Yeah.
1 to 4 years.
What?
People, when you think about it, like, let's just take getting a divorce, for example, or leaving a relationship. That takes a long Yeah, I was blown away. So my math brain then says, okay, if you're taking even a year to make a decision and you're thinking about that decision, let's say even 5 hours a week. So, 5 hours times 52 weeks times put a dollar amount against each hour that you're working. Let's just say $100 an hour. How much money is sitting on that decision, not making it, costing you? And if it takes
Mm.
it's this much, but 2 years and 3 years, like the anyway, it blew my mind.
Oh my gosh, it makes total sense. Like, because if you're not thinking about the decision, then you could be doing something else. You can be generating money, you can have more clients, you can be going to the park, like time is money, right? So if we're spending our time to thinking about a decision, and honestly, yes, 1 to 4 years. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, yeah, some of the big decisions have taken me quite some time. Other ones, honestly, I've been just like, I'm going for it, and I just like make a decision, and like 1 week later it's done. But in
Right.
general, we do take quite some time to think, because we're like putting all the pros and cons right in our head. Sometimes we don't even write it down, or we write it down and we don't like the answer, so we're like, let me just take a little bit of more time to think about it and sit through it, maybe ask my pillow overnight, and then 1 year is gone, 4 years are gone, and you're still in the same relationship, you're still in the same business, you're still in the same job, you're still in the same house, and nothing has changed.
Stuck.
Oh, I love this thing. This is so good.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone who's listening to this, please go and download her app like right now. Don't wait a minute. Like, make the decision today to download that app and test it and do one and see how that feels, and how that resonate with you, and see if you can start using that tool as part of something that you use for your business, right? Or for your personal life, and see the wonderful effects that it can have when you're actually removing all the clutter and then putting all this beautiful technology for you to work for you, right?
Absolutely.
So Dana, how can people find you if they want to have like 101 or look at more of your courses or your books, all the amazing stuff that you're doing?
I make it really easy. If you can just remember the Decision Smith, you'll find me everywhere. So that's my website, that's, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you need to find me, that's the name of the app. If you want to email me, I even have the decisionsmith@gmail.com. It's all very, succinct in terms of Decision Smith. So that's all you need to do.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time today, Dana. This has been absolutely wonderful. And thank you for all of you that have been joining us in this wonderful adventure of decision making. All right. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. And as a reminder, if you really, really like this episode, please give us a rating or leave a review. This will help us spread the word to more spiritual entrepreneurs who are looking to host profitable and heart-centered retreats, and even just grow their business in general. So thank you so much for watching or listening in any case, and see you in 2024.